Hey guys, welcome to episode 23 of A Cup of Positivity. This week on the podcast, we have Vairi Alison, a mental health advocate who is learning to manage life with bipolar disorder. Although Vairi suffered with symptoms of bipolar disorder since she was 11, she was only diagnosed with it in her early 30s, and since then has dedicated her time and energy to learning all she can about the disorder, how to manage it, and how to help others do the same. This episode is full of information and will hopefully shine a light on some of the stigma surrounding bipolar disorder. As always, I hope you enjoy listening, and please don't forget to like, comment and share if so. See you soon. Hi Vairi, how are you? Welcome to A Cup of Positivity.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you for coming on. I've been stalking your Instagram for a couple of days.
I know, I've noticed likes coming through. I'm like, oh, she's at it again.
Oh yeah, I always do before I have a guest. But yeah, I really like your Instagram because it's very you're a mental health advocate and you're all about sharing your story and being quite genuine on your profile, which I really like. But for anyone watching or listening who, actually I forgot, you brought your cup of tea with you, didn't you?
I did. I've still got the tea bag in.
Yeah. Oh, I've got a tea bag in as well because it's a herbal one. But have you got just a normal tea?
No, I've got vanilla chai, but it's smelling very I don't know, it smells very strong now. I've left it in for ages because I've been running around. So,
yeah.
But yeah.
I love a chai though. Chai's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I've got a tea called, what's it called? After Eat, and it's peppermint and cocoa. So it's like an after eight, but in tea form.
Oh, I like that. I can't really imagine how it would taste, but it sounds like it would be pretty good.
Yeah, it smells very pepperminty. So I don't know if the cocoa is coming through, but I'm just going to let it brew through it.
I'm going to ask you halfway through. I'm going to be like, how's the tea?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah, if you can introduce yourself to people who might not have seen your page before, and then we'll just go from there.
Yeah. So my name's Vairi. As you've already said, I am a mental health advocate, and basically just want to document my journey through recovery, through self-love, through just my general experience, to help raise awareness and break some of the stigma down that mental health still has. And I think actually mental health or mental illness or not, I think that the steps that I've been through and the things that I've learned can just help general people, in learning to love themselves and learning to accept the things that they've been through. So I'm just quite honest about most of my life now online, and try to encourage others to do the same.
You also, I love that your profile name is A Face in the Crowd, or sorry, The Face in the Crowd. Where did that come from?
Basically, I just moved to London about 5 years ago, and I was very, very overwhelmed. I didn't yet know that I had bipolar disorder at that time, and probably looking back, I was quite depressed. And I remember just being in central London and looking around at everybody, and nobody was making eye contact. Nobody was, it's quite an isolating feeling living in London. And I remember just probably feeling a bit poetic and looking around and being like, all these people are just faces in the crowd, and they've all got stories to tell, and they all have, their own backstory and their own shit that they've dealt with. That kind of just resonated with me. I am just another face in the crowd, and with social media, that's what we all are. We're all just faces, normally the best versions of ourselves. And we put that out there, and nobody really knows the truth. And so many times when I started being more honest about things, people would be like, oh, you're not mentally ill because you're this, or, you can't be mentally ill because you're this. And then I was like, I want to be more than just a face in the crowd. I want to share my story, and I want other people to do that too. So that's kind of where that came from.
How long ago were you diagnosed with bipolar disorder?
It will be 3 years in February 2021. So
Okay.
Still relatively in the grand scheme of like recovery journey, still relatively new. So there's still a lot that I'm learning about. There's still a lot that I don't understand. There's still a lot that really angers me because it is a very difficult illness to take hold of. But I think I'm enough into it now that I do have a foundation of understanding that helps me then help others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then if we just go like back a step, like what exactly is bipolar disorder and how does it affect you?
Yeah, so basically, the common misconception with bipolar is that it's just that you're moody and that you have mood swings and you're quite erratic, when actually it's a little bit more complicated than that. So it's essentially a spectrum, and at any point I can sit anywhere within that spectrum. So there's the depressive side of things, which I think is more easy for people to understand and relate to, and then move through like a mood scale up to like a middle normal mood, which is what we would all experience the majority of the time.
Yeah.
And then you go up to the higher end of the scale where you have hypomania and mania, which is, some people think it's just like being really excited or being really hyper, hence the start of the hypomania. But it can also manifest in agitation, it can manifest in anger, it can manifest in like a ridiculous level of confidence, like you think that you're completely unstoppable, you think that you could fly, you think that you're Jesus, you think that whatever. Paranoia is another huge one. When you're manic or hypomanic, you can be very, very paranoid. It's very common for people to think that like the world is spying on them. When I was in hospital, I knew people that thought that everybody's buttonholes had cameras in. So
Right.
when you were talking, if you were wearing a shirt with buttons, he'd be like, no, don't film me. And he genuinely believed that there was like spy holes in door handles, and he thought that like lampposts were storing his information.
Right.
So it's very, very different to different people. For me, my depression manifests in normal depression. I experience, very low mood and low motivation, suicidal thoughts, all of that wonderful subject matter that everyone loves to hear about. And then on the hypomanic or manic side of things, incessant spending, having like a real problem with spending, then being overtly confident, quite promiscuous, quite flirtatious. They are all very, very common side effects of bipolar disorder if you're the higher end of the scale.
Mm-hmm.
Also, agitation is a huge one for me. Not being able to concentrate, quite like not being able to like control my emotions or regulate them. So that's kind of a brief overview. There's so much I could like go into, but that's the basis of it.
Yeah.
Basically unable to regulate whether we're low or high. But the main differentiation is that your period, your episode has to be a minimum of a week for it to be classed as a bipolar episode, rather than just a period of agitation or a period of being a bit wild or whatever.
Yeah.
It lasts for a minimum of a week. My episodes tend to last a minimum of 3 weeks and a maximum of about 3 months. So that can be quite a destructive period if you're not sleeping and you're not like taking care of yourself. Basically, it's like you're on a little weekend bender, but it just lasts for like 3 weeks. Like you don't sleep, you don't eat, you want to drink too much, you want to, like, addiction's a huge problem. So it's kind of the mental illness that has a little bit of all the mental illnesses thrown in. It's kind of like the bit of the running joke that people with bipolar have. Like you have a bit of anxiety, a bit of panic attacks, a bit of depression, a bit of anger problems. It's literally all just thrown in the mix.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's
but
delightful.
So then, because I was going to ask, like, what's your day to day like if you're like working and like, you know, doing regular things, like how can you plan for anything if you don't know how you're going to be feeling?
It's very hard, because you, like you say, I don't know how I'm going to feel, and I don't know if I'm going to want to get up that day. I think the one thing that I maybe have on my side is because I was 30 when I was diagnosed, I'd learned to live with it for years undiagnosed. So I had got into a pattern where even when I felt depressed, I had a mortgage to pay. So I had to go to work.
Yeah.
So I just have learned, it's very difficult, but in a period of either mood, I have to tell myself, okay, Vairi, this isn't real. Like, you aren't really a terrible person, or you're not really Beyonce. You have to go to work today because, you know, you've got to pay the bills, because you're not actually going to get on stage in Wembley tomorrow. So it's just learning to identify that it is an illness. And the same way, if you've got a cold, like, you know that you're going to feel terrible while you've got that cold, and you like feel like you're never going to breathe again normally, but deep down you know that in like a week, 10 days, you're going to feel normal again, you're going to be able to breathe properly, you're going to feel absolutely fine. That's what I have to tell myself when I'm in an episode. Work can be very difficult, and working from home in lockdown has been close to impossible, if I'm honest, because I thrive on routine. Like, a routine will kind of be stable. So not having to get up and get dressed and put my makeup on and go to work and have that social interaction has hugely impacted in my productivity. I get very, very easily distracted when I'm trying to do anything. So to just try and sit in front of a laptop for 7 hours of the day without being able to have a chat with someone, or without being able to do that, my productivity has been terrible. And obviously stress and stuff with lockdown, that also hasn't helped, because that's a trigger for most people with bipolar. So I mean, on the whole, my main thing is just to remind myself that it is an illness, and to just try and get on with it, but also identify when I need to take time. So like, quite often on a Friday, I'll just be so exhausted that I'm like, actually, I'm going to have to cancel these plans with friends because I've got to take care of myself.
Yeah.
Because I know I've got to do it again. Like, there are lots of people who aren't high functioning with bipolar, and that is kind of the misconception that people have, that you can't hold down a 9 to 5, that you can't hold down healthy relationships or healthy friendships, because it is such all over the place, like, unpredictable illness. But there are plenty of people out there that do manage it and do live a fairly normal life, but it does take work. So yeah, that's basically how I try to live a normal life, but it's not always very easy.
Yeah. But then how did you identify that it was that? Like, what made you go and get that diagnosis as well?
Basically, I've kind of always been quite a dramatic character. So going back through work I've done with my psychiatrist and my psychologist, we can identify my first episode was when I was 11. So it was like 20 years before I was actually diagnosed. And I think it's one of those things, I just didn't know that other people didn't think about the things that I thought about. And I didn't know that other people had these weird, like, thoughts and feelings that went on inside. I just thought that everybody like me felt like that, but just didn't talk about it. And I think in my teens, it was just kind of put down to, you know, she's going through something, puberty, whatever. Yeah. Then in my 20s, it's perfectly fine to go out and be wild and want to drink all the time and be quite irresponsible. And then I remember just coming towards the end of my 20s, and a lot of my friends were getting married and having children. And I was just like getting younger friends and younger friends and younger friends. I just didn't want it to didn't want like the party to be over.
Yeah.
And then I was in a relationship with this guy and just kind of realized that I'd been going around in circles for ages, and he was just like, oh, you know, you're really unpredictable, and he was quite toxic. But what he said did resonate. I was like, no, this is right. Like, I can't always control how I feel. I am quite erratic. And I honestly thought the hyper version of me was the real version, because that was the version I liked. I was confident, I was funny, I like was very charismatic. Like, a lot of people miss that side of them when they're medicated and they become quote unquote normal. So I thought that this wonderful charismatic person was who I really was. So I just thought that the regular depression was that I just had, you know, chronic depression, and it came back maybe 2 or 3 times a year. So I initially did go to the doctors to say, I think I'm depressed. And he did that. If anyone's been to the doctors with depression, they always go through and they do this little questionnaire. Yeah. And then at the end of that, he was like, okay, I really think you need to see a counsellor. I'm going to get you to see one quite quickly. So I think it was like within a week or something, I had a call from my local talking therapies team, and they gave me an assessment call. And at the end of that call, they were like, we think that you need to see a psychiatrist. And I remember just like, you know, what the hell? Like, because to me, a psychiatrist was like, well, you're actually crazy, like, if you need to see a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
So I was like, what are they talking about? I need to see a psychiatrist. Like, I've just got depression. Like, I don't need to see a psychiatrist. And then I was like, okay, but why? And they basically said, have you heard of bipolar disorder? And I had, but only because of EastEnders. So like, I didn't really know what it meant. And they just said, we've gone through, like, there's like certain questions that they'll ask you about behaviours, very similar to the depression questionnaire, but a little bit more in depth. And I'd like marked at like 97% or something on that. So they said, we have a strong suspicion that you could be bipolar. So we want to refer you to a psychiatrist, because you will need to medicate and you will need specific counselling for somebody with like a secondary mental illness. And because I was 30 by the point I was diagnosed, and it's a progressive illness, they wanted to try and get it under control before it was getting worse, because it was getting worse. My episodes were getting more frequent, they were harder to control, and I was just all over the place. I was, if I look back now or look at even photos of myself, I'm just like, Vairi, you were a mess. Like, I was dead behind the eyes all of the time. But I didn't know any different. I just thought that that's how I was. I thought I was a sad person that occasionally liked to get a bit wild, like, and let my hair down. So yeah, it was a kind of a shock when they actually diagnosed me, to be honest. And I didn't really understand anything about it. And they were like, you've got bipolar disorder, this is your medication, we'll see you later, like, we'll see you in 6 weeks. And I didn't really know what it meant. I didn't know how to manage it. I didn't know anything. So it was kind of like, okay, now what? Like, I've got to have this for the rest of my life. Like, it's not curable. It is a chronic illness. So how do I deal with this? And the stuff you see on Google is terrifying. Like, when you Google it, you think you're never going to be able to live a normal life. You think you're never going to be able to look after children. You think you're never going to be able to do a lot of things, which is why I decided to do what I'm doing now, because I want, when people to put bipolar into like bipolar hashtag, I'd like to think that they might come across my profile and see that you can be okay, and you can be normal, and you can like have hobbies, and you can have friends, and you can, because everything I saw when I Googled it was like, well, I'm never going to live a normal life. Like, my life is over as I know it, which it was, but actually it turned out for the better. Like, that diagnosis, having that understanding of myself, I think was quite possibly one of the best things that could have happened, because it's just made me understand myself so much more.
So then talk me through like the treatment that they were giving you, in like medical treatment. So it's a combination of medication and then therapy.
So I had this is the other thing with bipolar medication is very complicated because it manifests so different in different people. So I was initially put on a medication that seemed to work for me quite well. My insomnia was quite bad at the beginning, so I was taking nightly sedatives, basically just to knock me out. But I think they all, you know, if you get diagnosed with anything, I think quite often you're given sleeping tablets because
to
help you like process the news, you need to be able to like rest. So I was on a medication called sodium valproate for the first couple of months, and it was just kind of starting to work, and then they made that illegal to take for women of childbearing age.
Oh, okay.
So then I had to come off that, and then they put me on different forms of medication. So you can have mood stabilizers, which is what I take now, and sodium valproate is a mood stabilizer, or you can have a mixture of antipsychotic medication and antidepressants, because the antipsychotics will bring you down from a high, and they'll stop psychosis, and they'll stop like voices in your head and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously antidepressants will lift your mood. So they're the two main options you can have. And then other people may just take antidepressants when they feel like they need them for a period of time, and then flip to an antipsychotic when they feel like they're going into that episode if they're not medicated constantly. So I started trying lots of different medications, and I think about 7 or 8 months in, my medication wasn't stabilizing me at all. It actually had made me a hell of a lot worse. At that point, my psychiatrist referred me to the crisis team because I kept getting like blackouts. I just would like, one day I just found myself in the middle of the road on my street, and I couldn't tell you how I'd got there. I just completely couldn't remember anything. I would like phone my mom at like 3 o'clock in the morning because I just couldn't bear the thought of living anymore. Like, it had made me the worst version of suicidal I'd ever been. So eventually I was referred to the crisis team, and I had group therapy with them. I had a couple of one-to-one sessions, and they kept me on their books until my medication stabilized me. So I was actually signed off work for a period of time at that time, and nurses came to my house twice a day and administered my medication because they wouldn't allow me to keep medication in the house and stuff. And then when they would come, they'd give me like brief chats and try and like help me understand the illness and stuff. I was also sent on a like managing bipolar disorder course. So that was like a 12-week course of group therapy where they taught us about it and said, this is what it is, this is how it manifests, this is how you can manage it, these are different things that you can do, these are support groups you can join. But I was quite lucky that I got sent on that, because I've got lots of friends with bipolar that like that course isn't offered in their borough or by their local council. So I think it does very much depend on where you are. I was on the waiting list for NHS counselling, but it took 2 years for me to actually get an appointment.
Oh my God. I mean, I've heard of like 3-month waits with like counselling and stuff, but 2 years, that's...
Yeah.
What are you supposed to do within that time?
I know, like, it was ridiculous. And I was so acutely unwell as well. Like, for a long time, I was like a shadow of myself, because I just couldn't, it was like someone had told me this, it had brought so much stuff to the surface, and then I had no way of processing it because nobody understood. Like, my friends and my family were great and they could try and listen, but unless you've experienced it, you have absolutely no idea what getting a diagnosis like that feels like, and the permanency of it. Like, because I'd always felt up until that point like it's all right when I get married, or when I have kids, or when this, when that I'll be happy when attitude. And then basically I just thought I'd grow out of it. So for them to then say, no, this is an illness and this is something that you will die with, I just couldn't get my head around that. And I had a counsellor explain it to me like you're going through a period of grief. Like, it's the same as if you get diagnosed with any kind of chronic illness. Like, cancer or diabetes or anything, like something that you could have until you die. It might not kill you, it might, but you know that you're always going to have it, and for periods of time it's going to make you unwell.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when I was like, oh gosh, yeah, like it is just like a physical illness, because I'll be fine, and then all of a sudden, like an episode will come out of nowhere, and I'll just be flawed again, and will be really unwell. So therapy did definitely help me work through things and understand things, and change my life really, because obviously it just helped me process a lot of things that had happened, because a lot of your behaviors and the situations that you put yourself in when you're unwell then cause secondary mental health problems. So yeah, it's a whole big ball of complicated emotions really, but I seem to be having a bit of a handle on it now, so that helps.
Well, that's like the medical side of stuff, but then how did you like educate yourself after you were diagnosed, like on the disorder, but also like in general mental health? Like, where did you look? You said like Google wasn't very helpful, so like where do you find helpful information?
I read a lot of books. I've always been a reader anyway, so I basically just decided that if I was going to have to battle this all the time, I needed to understand what I was fighting. So I read quite a lot of books about bipolar. I read quite a lot of books about mental illness. I read books about just self-love in general. And then I started to try and find events. So Ruby Wax does an event called Frazzled Cafe. Okay. So I went to that for a while. It's basically where people that are feeling a bit frazzled by life, whether they've got a mental health illness or not, just would meet fortnightly, and they would go and they would just have a safe space to talk about how they were feeling, how they were coping. Like we could share coping mechanisms with each other, we could have a laugh at, like, because sometimes mental illness is funny. Like some of the things I think and say and do are hilarious, and I'm a person, I will always laugh at myself. I just think that's the way to get through things. So to have other people in a room where we were like, oh my gosh, like the other day, I thought a lamppost was singing to me. And they were like, whoa, you ain't heard nothing yet. Like, blah, 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 blah. And it was a safe space to laugh because we were all going through it together. And then I started to look at things like Instagram, and have definitely learned a lot from other people with bipolar just by searching hashtags and like connecting with other people. Like I have an amazing group of friends who either have bipolar or similar mental illnesses, and I can't explain how key that's been to just have somebody that when I message them and I'm like, I'm feeling manic, I don't then have to explain what feeling manic feels like. They'll come back and be like, how many days has it been since you haven't slept? Or have you tried this? Or is this not working? Like, because they know I don't need to explain it all. They can just know that it's exactly the same. And then that's also a reminder that it's a symptom. Because even though I know that, in the midst of it all, sometimes it's so hard to be like, okay, no, Vairi, like this is actually that you're feeling depressed because your illness is making you feel like you're a slob that's never going to achieve anything. And then hearing other people say that, I'm like, okay, that is normal. It's like if you've got a runny nose, you've got a cold. It doesn't mean that, you know, you're a weird person because you've got a runny nose. So I think just making that decision to never stop learning and to try and seek it out from other people. And somebody said that to me the other day. They were like, because I was like, I feel like I'm getting over my head with this Instagram stuff. Like I'm getting loads of followers now and people are messaging me, and, you know, I've had no training. I'm not a counsellor. I'm not this, I'm not that. And she was like, but you're an expert because you've lived it.
Absolutely.
Like if someone comes to you and says, how do I pull myself out of the depressive hole, or how do I manage mania, or how do I bring myself down from an intense high, you can go, right, okay, this is what I did. And you know how to deal with that. So I think that's where the best information I've found has been through Instagram. There's also a charity called Bipolar UK. I do a lot of work with them. And they have like an online e-community, which for bipolar specific, you can go on and ask questions, and there's like thousands of other people with bipolar on there that can share their experience. So I've definitely found that the information I've had from the NHS hasn't been anywhere near as helpful as the stuff that I've gone and found for myself. I do think mental health is definitely still stigmatized even by doctors. It's quite scary, actually.
I've had like quite a few guests as well that have had different types of mental health issues, whether it's like eating disorder recovery or things like that, and that I'm getting like that kind of message that actually there isn't that much support within the NHS. I mean, maybe it's just because they're overwhelmed, I don't know, but people are like seeking groups, I think, are the best thing, from what people have been telling me. People that you can relate to, I think, is probably one of the most helpful.
100%, because I know when I've been to the doctors, like I've maybe like left work to go to a psychiatry appointment or whatever, and I've had doctors be like, well, you're working, so you must be okay. And I'm like, I haven't slept for 3 days. Or if you go to like a mental health appointment and you're not the poster child for what people expect mental health to look like you've washed your hair and you've brushed your teeth and you have because I think they expect people with mental illness still to be very unkept and not look after themselves, when actually that's how I've always been like, right, okay, I've got my face on now, I've done my hair, I'm in like a different mode, and I'll deal with my crap when I get home tonight and I close my door. And I don't know how doctors and medical professionals still can't see that that's a way that high functioning people will cope, by putting on lipstick and straightening your hair. And you don't necessarily need to look like you want to jump off a bridge to want to jump off a bridge. Like it's actually really scary, the ignorance at times.
So what kind of help can people get? Like if someone's listening to this and thinking, the symptoms you're describing sound familiar, what kind of help would they get? Would you just say definitely go straight to the doctor, or what would you advise?
I think with bipolar, as I mentioned briefly before, it is progressive. So if you think that you could be experiencing symptoms of bipolar, then you will need to get a formal diagnosis to be able to get the help and support that you need. I think I know a lot of people that don't medicate forever, but I do think that you probably would need to medicate for a period of time to become stable and to understand things. That's kind of where I want to get to a point where I understand the illness well enough that I can drop my medication right down and try and manage it. But you would need to see a psychiatrist for a formal diagnosis. So I would say either do a self-referral to talking therapy, and a therapist can do a referral to a psychiatrist if it's like your local council therapy, and it's just or go to a GP and just state that you're having these symptoms and that you've done some research and you believe that it could be bipolar, and you would like to be referred for a psychiatric assessment. They're not as scary as they sound. It sounds horrible. I imagined I was gonna walk in and like I'd be lying on one of them couches like on an American film, and they were like, it definitely wasn't like that at all. My first psychiatrist was great. Like we had a laugh, and it was a very open and like honest conversation. It was quite straightforward. It isn't always. I know that I was quite lucky in my experience that it all was diagnosed quite quickly, but if you're concerned, at least get yourself in the system, because that's key to try and get it identified. And to try and get the help and support that you'd need, because you can't do it yourself.
And what about like charities? Because I've seen on your feed that you've got some posts where you've tagged like Mind Charity or the Samaritans. Like, are there supportive charities out there that you could maybe call, even if it's not bipolar, but just like general feelings of like, struggling with lockdown, feeling alone, things like that?
Yeah, there's so many out there. I would say the Samaritans is definitely one of the most known. But that's for a reason. They are amazing. The work they do for mental health and to have that listening, non-judgmental ear is key. So the Samaritans are great. Mind are more of an information service. So if you go to the Mind website, you can literally see every mental illness on there. So you can look at bipolar disorder and it will tell you everything about it, what the symptoms are, what treatment plans are, literally some mental illnesses, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, there's so many different ones out there that are a little bit more rare or niche. So it'll have all of those and specific charities that might help you if you believe that you've got that. So they're great. They do also have an info line that if you want to call and ask someone questions about those illnesses, that info line is open Monday to Friday, 9 till 5:30. So they're great. And then you've got teen specific ones, you've got male specific ones, you've got some that are specific for people who may be in like a domestic violence relationship and that's affecting their mental health. There are so many support lines out there, and I would just say that if you're ever in a point where you're struggling and you can't get to a doctor, because it is harder than ever right now to get an appointment straight away with the doctor, that those helplines and those support services are life-saving. Because what I will always say is just try and break that thought. So if you're feeling suicidal or you're feeling completely overwhelmed or agitated, to take yourself away and to speak to somebody who's completely non-judgmental, who will listen to you, who will maybe help you put things into perspective, who will not necessarily offer you like therapy or counselling, but they will give you basic advice, maybe breathing techniques, maybe tell you to go and drink a glass of water and sit in a different room. Because I find when I'm in like my worst states, if I'm lying in my bed at 3 a.m. and I can't sleep and I'm overwhelmed by certain thoughts or whatever, you need to just like break that thought, step away from where you are. And those support lines will give you advice like that you just wouldn't necessarily think of otherwise. So yeah, they are life-saving, and I would definitely recommend them. I mean, they're obviously all quite busy at the moment because of everything that's going on, but that you will always get through. There's hundreds of volunteers that are stepping up to want to listen to you and want to remind you that you're enough, that you matter, you're important, and that you will be able to get through it.
Okay. And then I read also on one of your on your captions that you were talking about like the mental health like dialogue that you're seeing on social media. You're a bit fed up with it. What exactly like were you referring to, and like what do you want to see on like social media?
I think for me, I think it's great that social media is spoken about. That mental health is spoken about on social media. But the thing that grates on me is it's only okay not to be okay up to a certain point. So there's all of this like, reach out and speak to someone, or it's okay to be depressed, or it's completely normal to feel like that. But if you actually then want to be like, okay, so I was hearing voices, or, oh, I see things, or like, if it's not your straightforward depression or anxiety, like common, everybody knows somebody with them, people will still be like, actually, that's too much for me. Like, it's not spoken about in the same way. I mean, obviously, I speak about it on my feed quite openly, and I post about it, and a lot of my feed is like that because I choose to follow accounts that promote mental health in the way that I want to see it. But so often I will post something and then I'll have loads of people message me and be like, oh, I had no idea, and I didn't know this, and I didn't know that. And it's just not out there and not normalized that actually people do experience these quite nasty symptoms of a mental illness, like believing that you're Jesus, for example, or believing that you can fly, or the things that actually sound crazy and people can't relate to. There's no space for that, and there's still people that will use language like, oh, the weather's so bipolar, or oh, I'm so OCD, when you're really just like a really tidy person. So I just think that there's a lot of lip service paid to what people think that they should say, but I don't think that a lot of people really believe it. And so many people still think that it's not real. Like, they think it's not a genuine illness. And I've had so much experience of that from people, like in my workplace or in day-to-day life. People have just been like, well, you know, just snap out of it, or chin up, or do some positive affirmations and you'll feel better. Like, all of those things work and they have a place, and I do them in my day-to-day. I'm not knocking that, but there has to be a more normalized conversation about taking medication, about needing intensive therapy, about being hospitalized against your will. Like, when I tell people I was hospitalized, people are like, oh my gosh, like you're that ill, like you're that crazy. And I'm like, yeah, but you can say that to someone if they were hospitalized because they'd had a heart attack. That's not their fault. And there's still so much conversation like about mental illness coming from things that people have done, rather than the things they're done being a byproduct of an illness. Like, I think there's still that misunderstanding that your behaviors are not like because of a mental illness, they're what caused the mental illness. So that's why I get kind of a bee in my bonnet about it, because there's just so much ignorance about it, and especially like I would say in particular, like bipolar and schizophrenia have the most stigma still attached to them. And I think that's because there's a lot of the things that can manifest in an illness are things that come with shame. So like addiction, gambling, drink, drugs, overspending. They're all things that, like, if you do those things, people might be like, oh, she can't even keep control of her life. So, and that's hard. Like, I remember at work once, we had this mental health day, and there was like this leaflet about bipolar on the table, and this guy that I worked with picked it up, and it said like something about having a sex addiction, and he like got the leaflet and was like pointing at me, and I was like, sorry, are you 12? Like, it says sex. Oh my gosh. And I think because people, definitely British people, like, we still don't talk about things like sex really openly, and we still don't maybe talk about gambling and addiction and all of these byproducts of certain illnesses. And if we do, they're in a very negative and derogatory way. So people don't want to speak up about saying, I've got bipolar, because then someone can go, oh, hello Google, what's bipolar mean? Oh, so Vairi must be a sex addict gambler who can't control her money and is, you know, a complete and utter hoe. Like, they'll just make that assumption. And I think there just needs to be more like normal conversation about it. And not in a cliche, it's okay not to be okay. Because actually, I don't want to hear that when I'm sitting rocking in the corner of my room crying for the 4th day running. It's not okay to feel like that. I went off on a bit of a rant there. You can tell I'm a bit, it gets me going.
No, it's good, because I feel like we need to be having these types of conversations, because whenever I think of like bipolar, I feel like I've always heard it in like a sarky kind of like, I don't know why I have this. I don't know why I have this image of like guys describing their exes as like, oh yeah, she was bipolar. Like that, I don't know. That's like the first thing that comes to mind.
How do you think I feel when like I am actually with bipolar ex? Like, it's not even a lie.
Yeah. But then I was going to ask you as well, like, what's it like for you in terms of relationships? Are you in a relationship? Are you dating?
No, I am single at the moment. Lockdown, it's hard out here in
Yeah.
lockdown. Trying to meet new guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm single. I made a very conscious choice to be single for a while, because I realized that men had a huge impact on my mental health, and I found them quite triggering, to be honest. So I just decided to be single for a while I worked on that. When it comes to relationships, it's hard because I don't even want to be with myself a lot of the time. So I think to really believe that somebody else would want to be with me like 24/7, for example, if we got married, I still really find that really hard to believe, because I don't want to be with me 24/7. So why is some rando like Dave going to want to be like, it's like a difficult one. And I think it's very difficult just to be in a relationship with someone who can be so like self-deprecating and can be so like self-destructive. I know that people, like even for my friends, for them to see some of the things I say and some of the things I do, I know how hard it is for them. And sometimes I don't want to get in a relationship because I don't want to fall in love with someone and then see how it hurts them to see me like that. It's bad enough with like my mom and my sister and my dad and my best friends, like to bring another person into this whole heap of crazy is difficult. And then again, when I do try to date, guys have this misconception of it. So I think it definitely puts people off. I'm really honest about it pretty much from the get-go though, because one, we live in this age that if someone starts talking to you on Hinge or meets you in a bar, takes your name, one of the first things they're going to do is look to see if they can find you on Instagram. Like everybody does that. I don't care what they say, everybody does that. And I've got such an unusual name that it's really, really easy to find me. So even if I don't tell them, they're going to find out because it's all over my Instagram. And then also, if they have a problem with it, I'd rather just know, like, then you can just leave. And I said that to a friend the other day. I was talking to a guy and he was like making a joke about, oh yeah, I bet you've got loads of people in your DMs. And I was like, yeah, girls wanting to talk to me about their mental illness. Like I don't get any guys. I said, I think I've shot my relationship in the foot, like being so open about it. And he was like, no, Barry, I just think that the right person will love that about you and love that you want to educate people and you know, you don't want a guy that's just going to want to be with you because, you know, you do an excellent pouty selfie. Like you want someone who's going to appreciate everything underneath the surface. And then people will have weird thoughts about it, of whether they would or wouldn't date someone. And there's been times where I've been like talking to someone on like a dating site and I'll like tell them and then they'll just unmatch me. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
But I don't care. I don't care. I'm very happy with the people I have in my life as it is. I would absolutely love to be a wife and a mother and all of that. But if it's not my time, it's not my time.
Yeah.
I'm quite happy to keep working on myself and keep like helping other people work on themselves until some amazing guy comes along and is like, do you need some help with that, Barry? And I'll be like, yes, I've been waiting for you for 7 years. Come and take some weight off your shoulders.
Yeah. Then how can we like help each other or like anyone we know that might be struggling with mental health issues?
I think this is a tough one because some of my friends do it so well and some of them it's a bit patronizing. So I think have a conversation. Ask your friend how they want to be supported. Don't make the assumption that they want to be texted every day saying, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
Or like for me, I'm a person that I'm not very good at talking about where I'm at in the moment. So I've got one or two people. They're like probably classes like my carers in like bipolar terms. So like my mom, my sister, my best friend. They're the people that I will be very honest and be like, I'm in an awful place right now. And I might want to talk loads or I might not want to talk at all, but I know I need to be accountable to them for that. And I think that's a key thing that anyone with a mental illness should have, kind of a care plan, like people that you will let them know, you will check in with them regularly. They'll be able to then start to look out for patterns of behavior, triggers, like they'll know when they can look at you and tell that you've not slept for ages and maybe suggest things. For me, I've told my friends and family the things that work for me. Okay. So when I'm depressed, they know then to be like, oh, when's the last time you went for a run? Or why don't we go and meet you and go for a walk? Or they might send me a book in the post they'll think I like. Or like before COVID, I'm in a choir, and my friends knew that on a Wednesday I'd always would have had therapy before choir, and there was so many weeks I would be like, I'm just not going to come to choir, and one of them would like come to my house and be like, well, yes you are actually, because you know it'll make you feel better. So it's finding out what works for that friend, and then maybe sometimes being a little bit insistent, and you know your friends, you know when to push and when to retreat. I think when talking about mental illness, just try to never make it about you, because when I remember like telling my mom like that I was suicidal, and from that point I've always said since then, there is no worse feeling than feeling suicidal than telling someone that you love that you are. Because then not only do you feel suicidal, then you feel guilty because you've made someone that you love completely distraught. So I think don't say, but we all love you, or don't say, like, those things are so well-meaning, but they're not necessarily helpful in the moment. I think it's definitely better to just listen, give them a safe space to talk, and then when they've got it all off their chest, say, okay, what do you want me to do to help you?
Okay.
And just think about your language. Like, don't say things like, keep your chin up. Don't say things like, it'll be okay, shrug it off. Because if it was that easy, we would have done it. So just don't try and make it about you, and listen, I would say, is the simplest way to explain it.
I think that's really good advice as well. But what are you doing like for yourself? Because I know you talk a lot about self-care. Are there things that you do now, like on a regular basis, to make sure that you're like taking the best care of yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So I journal, which when I first started like talking about it, like there's so many things that I do that I think sound so cringy and so cliche. Cliche is only a cliche because it works and because it's true. So I journal, I would say every day, but I'd be lying. I journal when things get difficult. So when I've got too many thoughts in my head and I can't get them out because I'm agitated or because I'm depressed or whatever, I'll just go and write them all down. I have different Spotify playlists that will help my mood. So in the morning, I'll have one that's got music on that makes me want to get out of bed, makes me want to dance, gets me moving, gets me like feeling on a bit of a hype. That helps massively. But then I've also got slower ones that will bring me down if I'm feeling agitated, or make me cry. Because sometimes I'm so used to not wanting to cry, and I'm so used to trying to like be okay all the time, that when I want to cry and want to have that release, I can't. So I have a playlist of music that makes me want to cry, and that's self-care in itself. Having that release to cry is amazing. I really try to stick to a routine, so try to go to bed at similar times, try to get up at a similar time every day. I've taken running in lockdown like everybody else, like so many people have become runners in lockdown, but it works. Like, it's actually, I never thought I'd be the person that would be like, I can't wait to finish work and go out for a run, but it brings so much to the surface, and like the endorphins and stuff that really helps. I basically just thought back to the things that I loved to do as a child, and then started doing those again. because I think so often we take for granted like the simplicity of life when we were a child, and as an adult we'll be like trying to get happiness from a million and one different sources, and we'll also be trying to have a job and have a side hustle and have this, all while trying to look like we're having a fabulous life on Instagram. Like there's so much pressure that actually, just to be simple, that was why I joined my choir, because when I was a kid I like was always into amateur dramatics, and like I used to work at Butlins as a red coat, so like performing was something that I had always done. So I was like, right, that's it, I'm going to devote at least one night a week to singing. And now I'm in 2 choirs. Before lockdown I was rehearsing a minimum of twice a week. Just do things that you love. Like, again, a bit of a cliche, do whatever sets your soul on fire, whatever brings you joy. But self-care doesn't have to be bubble baths and all of that if that's not what you're into. It might be football, it might be the gym, it might be going for a walk with your dog, it might be cross stitch, it might it's different for anybody. You have to ask yourself what works for you, and if nothing else, just like whacking on a karaoke backing track and annoying my housemate, screaming some musical medleys.
Oh, I love that. Okay, well, we're running out of time. So I always finish my interviews off with what I call top three. So it's just 3 questions that are top 3. So the first one is top 3 positive influences or resources.
I would say number 1 would be, you've had her on your podcast actually, Penny Bell. She like inspires me like so much, and we've become quite friendly. But she got diagnosed with ADHD about the same time as I got diagnosed with bipolar. So we've kind of gone on the journey similarly. Yeah, she's just always reminds me that no matter how much you can have your shit together and you might know the practices, you also are going to still struggle, and that's okay. And I just think that that's an amazing message. There is a great book called The Power of Positive Thinking. That was one of the first books I read. I can never say the guy's name. It's like Eckhart.
Oh, Eckhart Tolle. Yeah, I don't know if it's Tolle or Tolle. Yeah.
Yeah, I never know how to say it, but that book is amazing. A bit of a hard read, but it really did change my perception on like the power of our mind and being able to control our realities just by the words we use and the thoughts that we have. So that's another great book, another great resource, sorry. And there is an author called Glennon Doyle. And she wrote, so it's a book actually and a person, and she wrote a book called Untamed. And when I finished it, I actually just cried because it's just such a powerful book about being the untamed version of yourself, because there's so much, obviously, as I've already said, pressure on being who the world wants you to be, that I think so many of us, especially women, lose who we actually are in trying to please everybody else. And it's just, she's just an amazing woman. She was married for years, had children, then she decided, she met a woman, fell in love with her and went off and married her, and just has gone through this journey of reprogramming herself and being the person I believe she was born to be. And I think it's a selection of stories throughout her life, and a bit about her kids and a bit about different things. And literally every chapter I was like, whoa, like, oh my gosh, like because it just makes you realize how much you're programmed yourself. Like your story is, obviously I'm not a middle-aged woman who's decided I'm a lesbian, but her experience was enough for me to be like, okay, so actually it is okay to change your mind about that opinion or whatever. So the book's amazing, her Instagram is amazing, and yeah, she just really encourages me to be more me.
So top 3 self-care tips that we can do weekly.
I would say have a really nice long bath or shower, not just like a quick one like you would have in the morning, like a really purposeful shower, like really enjoy it, take your music in, listen to the music, like just enjoy the experience of getting rid of, like cleaning yourself,
Cleansing, yeah.
Cleaning your mind as well. So that is definitely 1. 2, I would say move your body. Whatever music is your music, like we all love music, let's be honest. Whatever music is your music, whack it on loud and just dance. Doesn't matter if you can't dance, doesn't matter if like you look like a 3-legged hippopotamus. No one can see you, just move your body and laugh and enjoy your body, and maybe watch yourself when you're doing it, no matter how silly you look, because that helps you like learn to love like your body and learn how it moves and learn how like you look when you move. And I think just to be able to be comfortable in your own skin like that on your own then will translate more into like your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And I think the third one is one that I haven't done as much in lockdown and I probably should do more of. And that's just like get dressed up one day. Like even if you're not going anywhere, make sure you put on like a dress or a jumper or like a favorite item of clothing that makes you feel good. Like put some makeup on if that's your thing.
Yeah.
Like just have a day where you devote your day to you. Like maybe do it after your really long shower or bath, and just remind yourself that you're worthy of taking that time on yourself, because so often we'll just be like quick shower, quick 10-minute makeup routine, chocolate, and we always pride ourselves on that, like, oh, I got ready in 10 minutes today, look at me. Like we don't take the time to enjoy self-care and enjoy the moments. Like we're almost always trying to do the next moment, so be purposeful about those things.
Okay, awesome. And then the last one is top 3 tips that you would give someone who is struggling with mental health issues.
Okay, so number 1 would be go and get help. That's the priority, because I left it for years and now I'm just like, why didn't I just do it when I was 21? Why did I wait until I was 30? Like, because the damage that was done in those 10 years is going to take even longer to fix. So get help, find someone that you trust that can be your support. And that person, I would say, and I've said this before in another podcast, isn't always the most obvious person. Okay. So like I would have been like, oh yeah, I'll go to my best friend, or I'll go to my mom, and they were sometimes a bit too close to the situation. They were too emotive. So for maybe like the first 18 months, my main confidant was my male best friend, because he wasn't so emotional about it. And I remember the first time he gave me a piece of advice that I was like, oh, we're quite good at this actually. Like, and he still is the person that in certain situations would be the first person I would go to, because he does take himself away from the situation and he will view it in a more black and white way. So think about what kind of support you need and think about who's going to offer that, and go to that person rather than go to the most obvious best friend, mom, auntie, nan, whatever. And do that completely unapologetically. Don't care if you think you're going to insult your best friend because you've gone to 3 appointments and not even told her about it. Because this is about your recovery and you have to do it in the way that's right for you. And the third one would be, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't, if you know anyone else that has a mental illness, or if you know, even if you don't know them that well, like I have complete strangers message me about how do I cope with this, how do I cope with that, and sometimes I'm like, okay, you know, I mean, it's cool, that's why I put myself out there, But I think the people that shock me the most are people that I've maybe known my whole life, and we've never really had, you know, like someone that used to drink in a pub you used to work in or whatever, and they might send me a message and be like, okay, Vairi, this is what I'm struggling with. How do you deal with it? And I'm like, okay, like this is how I deal with it, whatever, and just have a normal conversation. Don't be afraid to ask that lady at work, or don't be afraid to phone a friend that you haven't spoken to for ages, but you knew that they went through something a while ago. Because I think anyone who's had this experience will be more than happy to help others because they know what it feels like. So question everything, and or go to a stranger on Instagram and just be like, look, I'm going through this, I see that you talk about it, can you help? And or if you can't, where can I go to help, to get help?
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. It's been like really informative as well. But
no problem.
How can people like connect with you after this podcast if they want to?
So they can follow me on Instagram, and that is theface_in_the_crowd. Or I'm also on Facebook. So they're the two main ways that you can contact me. I'm also starting my own podcast, which will be discussing mental health and managing mental health, and other people just sharing their story and their life tips. So if you wanted to have a listen to that, the Instagram for that is just _faces_in_the_crowd.
Awesome. Yeah, I followed that today. I saw it on your page. All right. Well, thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing weekend. And
yes, you too.
Yeah, I'll look forward to watching the rest of your journey as well and listening to your podcast when it comes out.
No problem. Take care.
Bye. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'm also available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Oh yeah, and don't forget to subscribe to get notifications on new episodes every Wednesday.